Who Framed Roger Rabbit was amongst one of the most expensive movies ever made up until that point, and thankfully was the highest grossing domestic film made that year, and it was on top of that additionally a film that Disney Animation needed up until that point, as it helped to revitalize animation for the pop culture world. Wonderful for the corporation, as only a few years prior it was considered to completely dissolve that branch off of Disney Animation. Thus, it's somewhat surprising considering a film as successful as Roger Rabbit never received a film series or a sequel of any kind. Well, in saying that, let me rephrase that. Roger Rabbit ever so nearly did receive a sequel. Now, as to why they have never quite materialized, one of the many reasons is that the character, Roger, is owned by separate parties. Two of the most prominent is Disney and Steven Spielberg, under Amblin. Thus, any oncoming projects need to be approved by both companies, which the negotiations sometimes can be a little bit complicated, but sometimes the reasons can go a little bit more deeper. How? So? Why? Well, let's find out. Now, as always with my videos, this will be a little bit comprehensible, but I think this time round we need a little bit of outside source to give us a hand.
Word's been getting downtown that...
You don't have to put on a voice. I know it's you.
Who?
You're the English guy, Mr. Scribbles.
Well, my name is actually...
I hear you want to know about the Roger Rabbit sequels.
How did you know I was gonna ask that?
It's in the title of the video.
What? Oh, I see.
Anyways, I'll be happy to tell you what I know.
Oh, thank...
We're gonna need an expert as well.
But who?
He's just over there in the shadows.
Hey, I heard you guys talking about Roger Rabbit. I can help with that.
Oh, him.
This is a Scribbles to Screen production, with your hosts, Mr. Scribbles, Sewer, and Seeker.
From Touchstone Pictures, Roger Rabbit is a smash. You'll want to see it a second time. 2 thumbs up raves Siskel and Ebert. 4 stars exclaims USA Today.
Look! Stop!
Who is the film going to be more entertaining for, adults or kids? I know who I think.
I think more for adults.
I agree, absolutely.
Yeah.
Only very shortly after the release of the first Roger Rabbit film, development of a sequel began, with Jeffrey Price, who wrote the first Roger Rabbit movie, coming back, and Nat Malden additionally aiding in the scripting. Their idea for a follow-up was not so much a sequel, but a prequel about how Roger came to stardom and set the story during the events of World War II. Our story begins in 1941, starting on a farm for the family named the Randalls, where they tell their cartoon son, Roger, on his 18th birthday, that he was adopted.
You're a toon.
A tone? It can't be. It's a cruel joke. I can't believe it. I won't believe it. What is a tune?
It's not bad, my dear. It means you're not quite the same species as most folks.
Oh, now I know why all the guys stare at me in the shower.
Only going off the photograph of a bottom half polka dot skirt of his mother, Roger decides that he's gonna go out and find his real mother. His adoptive mom then gives him his trademark red overalls. At the beginning of his journey, Roger hitches a ride with hopeless actor Richie, who is traveling to Hollywood, which is actually where Roger is going because he believes that his mother may be down there. When arriving in Hollywood, the first toon Roger encounters is Wile E. Coyote. Roger dances with delight in the hopes that he is closer to finding his mother. While searching, Roger overhears on a radio that there's an ad for a program that specializes in finding lost family members and reuniting them. Roger asks in a barbershop where he could find this radio studio, and a customer points him in the right direction. Being so thankful, Roger gives this customer a huge kiss as he runs off, and the customer turns out to be Eddie.
Toons.
Working at the station is Roger's future wife, Jessica Rabbit, where we learn that toons have the ability for creating authentic sound effects by only using their mouth, as Jessica supplies several different falling noises. Roger arrives at the station, desperately trying to ask the people for help to find his mother, but he ends up accelerating the situation. where only after shortly arriving at the station, he comes straight back out of it, although he does drop his photograph, but Jessica is kind enough to return it to him. And the two seem to immediately hit it off.
Jessica Krumpnick.
Roger, I don't know.
Roger and Richie later stay around Jessica and her roommate Wendy. To pay the bills, Wendy is a waiter working alongside another actor seeking to make it in Hollywood, the Roadrunner. The following day, Jessica is given a script by her boss with a questionable message, a propaganda message on how the US shouldn't be concerned about the war going on in Europe. That night, Jessica and Wendy go on a double date with Roger and Richie. They go and see a movie with the four of them high up in seating. But Richie gets so uncomfortable the longer he is looking at the height, and eventually he just storms out. Wendy quickly follows behind and asks what's wrong. His parents ideally wanted him to follow in his father's footsteps of being a pilot, but unfortunately he is immensely afraid of heights. Wendy opens up to him as well about her fear of spiders, and it gives Richie a sense of security. Meanwhile, Roger and Jessica discuss movies.
You know, I don't see why you shouldn't be in the movies.
Oh, I could never do anything like that. I mean, look at me.
Okay.
At first, she's self-conscious, but eventually they both begin to gaze at each other romantically. Richie may finally be on the verge of becoming a big actor, as he was able to get a one-line speaking role in a movie. But sadly for Roger, things aren't going so well. Only after a few days, he's beginning to give up hope that he'll ever find his mom. Some time passes and Richie's getting ready for his big role, but unfortunately for him, Roger busts in, spoiling the filming shoot, and just because he believed he was on the trail of finding his mother. While Roger may have completely destroyed the set, an executive was watching and was impressed by Roger's antics and offers him a gig of starring in cartoon shorts. The production brushes over the lost day of filming, but of course, Richie is mad at Roger since they never got around to filming his scene. Unfortunately, if things couldn't get any worse at the moment, news hits that Japanese soldiers have launched an attack on Pearl Harbor, bringing the United States into the war in Europe. We also find out that Jessica's boss, Otto, is actually a Nazi spy who tricks Jessica into coming along with him. We find out on a newsreel that the Toons are now taking part in the war effort because of their indestructibility, demonstrated by Goofy being shot at, much to his surprise. Some time passes, Richie enrolls in the army, and to his annoyance, he's stuck with Roger after he enrolled in the army as well. Richie meets another soldier who signed up for the war effort, Pee-wee, a Toon biplane who's immensely afraid of heights. And during the time that everyone's getting ready for their journey to Europe, we find out from Roger that he's been unable to reach out to Jessica for some time, wondering where she could be. Jessica is actually trapped in Berlin. Watched by Toon Panthers, she's stuck doing the duty of reading out political propaganda on the radio, with her Nazi boss Otto trying to move his affections onto her. But Jessica is disgusted and not interested. Jessica finally reaches her limits and refuses to read any more of the Nazi scripts, but that's until they reveal that they have her friend Wendy. We find out that the Nazis have a plan to kill Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt by launching a missile at an upcoming conference. Meanwhile, Richie ends up getting into a fight, which gets him locked in a jail cell. And Roger overhears Jessica on the radio finding out that she's in Berlin. After making amends, Roger helps Richie to break out of his jail cell, and they go off to save Jessica. Sneaking into the Nazis' base in disguise, they're able to find Wendy and Jessica, but learn the Nazis' evil plan to kill off major world leaders, and they all must work together to stop the missile. They concluded that the only way to stop it is that they must sabotage and destroy the machinery that controls the missile, but they need the keys to access the room. They retrieve the keys by Jessica seducing Otto, in a scene that isn't so subtle for a family film. Roger was able to call for backup on the radio, and just in the nick of time, all the Toons turn up to invade the base. Jessica, Roger, and Wendy are in a skirmish with Otto on an air tower, with Richie too nervous to climb up to help, but thankfully, he reunites with Pee-wee the cartoon plane, grabbing his controls, flying up to help, and punching Otto off. Roger and Richie both embrace Wendy and Jessica, and then they kiss the respected woman and head off. However, Otto is now gloating because he has successfully launched the missile, but then the Cartoon Panther crushes the Nazi. Pee-wee, the cartoon biplane, along with Roger and Richie all decide to chase the missile. Roger jumps on the rocket and is just able to take it off its course, exploding a safe distance away from the conference. At Hollywood Boulevard, there's a massive parade and celebration for the success of the sabotage of the Nazis' rocket, with Roger, Pee-wee, and Richie being national heroes. Roger and Richie perform the speech at the Chinese theater, but Roger's speech is cut short as he sees in the crowd his mom. They both tearfully reunite. His mom as well reveals at the ending that his dad is Bugs Bunny, ending the movie by saying,
"Ain't I a stinker?"
5 years after the production of Roger Rabbit, Spielberg directed and released the film Schindler's List, a film that takes an unfiltered look at the Nazis' concentration camps. And this has been amongst one of the hardest films for Spielberg to personally direct. The Spielbergs, a Jewish family that had lost a great number of relatives in Poland and Ukraine during the war. After the release of Schindler's List, Spielberg, who a decade prior made films mocking the Nazis, had a change of heart, no longer wanting to trivialize the dark point in human history. So it was presumed that this Roger Rabbit prequel, which would have been released during the early 90s, was cancelled because of these reasons. Although the facts don't quite add up, the first draft of Toon Platoon was written on May 22nd, 1989. 2 days later, the third Indiana Jones film was released, and that featured and mocked the Nazis. Schindler's List wasn't released until 1993, so that theory doesn't initially add up. The World War II idea was essentially abandoned by 1990, so it's always possible that Spielberg may have had a change of heart during the time frame. But yet again, Schindler's List was in development while Spielberg was working on the third Indiana Jones movie. And the film wouldn't officially be in pre-production until 1992, still 2 years away after the World War II storyline was abandoned. So it's quite clear that there's still a bit of an air of behind-the-scenes details that we don't entirely know about the production, and all we really have to go off of is the leaked script.
While plans for a Roger Rabbit sequel came immediately after the first movie, development on a live-action animation hybrid would take time. Disney told the press that the soonest they would be able to release a Roger Rabbit sequel was by 1992, in approximately 4 years after the original Roger Rabbit. With close to half a decade to go before the next film, there was an internal fear by the higher-ups that during that duration, Roger may fade out of the public's conscious. So to replenish that interest while Roger was so hot, it was reluctantly decided by the higher-ups that they would produce several Roger Rabbit short films that would stimulate the public's thirst for the property, and to boost their wider viewership, they would be shown theatrically, shown either in front of a Spielberg or Disney film, being since 1965, since the company had heavily embellished of creating a series of exclusive theatrical cartoons to match the same quality as feature animation. The first Roger Rabbit short, Tummy Trouble, shown before Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, was estimated to be one of the most expensive cartoons Walt Disney Animation had ever produced up until that point. This was going to be a yearly tradition for Roger Rabbit short films, so it was going to be a long-term investment, but it was seen as a viable gain for the corporation, as it would continuously promote Roger Rabbit until the eventual sequel. About roughly 12 shorts were planned, which would have brought the series up until 2001. However, despite the overwhelming warm reception to Tummy Trouble, things would very quickly go downhill behind the scenes. The second short, Roller Coaster Rabbit, there was a lot of internal debate as to what film it should be shown in front of. Spielberg wanted to show it before Amblin's Arachnophobia to boost the box office sales, where Disney wanted to prioritise the short to be shown exclusively before Dick Tracy, which they were building up to be their big summer blockbuster of the year. Head of Disney Michael Eisner eventually won out, with Roller Coaster Rabbit going to Dick Tracy. This seemed to have started the downfall for spoiling the future projects of Roger Rabbit, as not only productions for the sequel/prequel were stagnated for the rest of the 90s, but the enthusiasm for continuing the theatrical Roger Rabbit shorts fizzled out as well. There would be a 3-year gap with Trail Mix-Up, the third and so far final Roger Rabbit short. There was a fourth short that made it quite far in production called Hair in My Soup, but Spielberg was displeased with the storyline and demanded big changes despite a majority of the animation already being completed. Eventually, the fourth short was straight out cancelled, with only several animation cells re-emerging from the abandoned project. We have 3 other confirmed titles from possible Roger Rabbit shorts. We have Clean and Depress, Beach Blanket Bay, and Bronco Busting Bunny. It's not known how far these shorts got into development, but possibly not as substantially much as Hair in My Soup. Additionally, Yesterworld has revealed on Twitter on a previously unknown cancelled Roger Rabbit short called Who Found Roger, set shortly before the events of the first Roger Rabbit film. By the early 90s, things were not looking promising for a Roger Rabbit sequel, but just shy by the end of the decade, there would be one final big attempt to make the follow-up into reality.
In September of 1990, now knowing that bleak historical subject matter was out of the question, Nat Malden started writing another Roger Rabbit prequel, this time with the added assistance of Tony Sheehan and Jeff Stein. The team took their influence back to the classic Hollywood setting, focusing the story on how Roger Rabbit came to stardom in the first place. By beginning his acting career on Broadway, the title was known as Who Discovered Roger Rabbit. Alan Menken even wrote some songs to be featured in the film, but as of the time of recording this, only one has ever surfaced, and this would be This Only Happens in the Movies, which first came to knowledge in the mid-2000s when actress Carrie Butler performed a cover of it on her album. And later, at a D23 Expo, which celebrated 75 years of Disney animation, Alan Menken did a live performance of the song. After the initial pitch in 1990, it would take 8 years before this rendition of the story moved along any further in development. In 1998, Michael Eisner commissioned test animation. This piece was directed by Eric Goldberg, who had designed a new model sheet of a younger looking Roger. After 3 test scenes were filmed, 2 of those tests were made with the tunes in hand-drawn animation, with the props they hold being rendered in CGI. The first test was with some weasels, entering the office of a Hollywood agent to convince them to allow Roger to hold his audition. The sequence would have involved a CGI breaking table. The second test saw Roger grabbing a drink from an actor's hand. This was done to see if it would be an elegant transition of a live-action prop into a CGI render. Barry Temple did the hand-drawn animation for both tests. The third and final one saw Roger performing a small dance in the office of the agent. Roger being rendered in CGI, the CGI group was led by Eric Guaglione. Tom Bancroft did the 2D animation underneath for the CG artist to work off of. It took the computer division a whole year to complete the sequence, carefully emulating the hand-drawn look. It was considered to be a technical achievement at the time, emulating classic 2D Disney animation with CGI. The budget to produce the film was considered quite high, and Eisner felt that the gap between the first film and this new one was just too long, and that nobody would want to see a follow-up to a movie that was 10 years old at that point. So the project was shelved and the budget was allocated to Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor. Although the CGI test didn't go to waste, the valuable knowledge that was gained went towards further development on organic CGI animation for other Disney projects. The only bits of material that have surfaced over the years is the CGI test and the first draft made 8 years prior, although it's very possible that over that long stretch of time, various other scripts had been written based on the initial draft, with the hand-drawn test still missing today. And while this was the last big push to get a prequel or sequel of any kind made, that doesn't mean that there haven't been attempts, or at the very least talk, in recent years. In November 2016, while promoting his film Allied in England, Robert Zemeckis stated that the sequel moves the story of Roger and Jessica Rabbit into the next few years of period film, moving on from film noir to the world in the 1950s. He also stated that the sequel would feature a digital Bob Hoskins, as Eddie Valiant would return in a ghost form, which is something I can't say that I agree with. While the director went on to state that the new script is terrific and the film would still use hand-drawn animation, Zemeckis thinks that the chances of Disney greenlighting the sequel are slim. As he explained in more detail, the current corporate Disney culture has no interest in Roger, and they certainly don't like Jessica at all. The last word of a sequel came in 2018, again from Zemeckis. While promoting his latest film, Welcome to Marlin, Zemeckis reiterated in an interview with Yahoo Movies that though the sequel script is wonderful, Disney is unlikely to produce it, and he does not see the possibility of producing it as an original film for Disney+, as he feels that it does not make any sense as there is no princess in it.
If you've enjoyed this video, then don't forget to like and subscribe, and ring the bell. Be sure to support all the contributors in this video. Find them via the description down below. I'll see you on the other side. Ta-ta, sweetie.